Min-soo sat in his dim booth at the Korean Space Observation Center. His eyes felt dry from staring at the screens. The night shift was always quiet. Outside the window, the city lights of Taejun shone below, brighter than the stars he was paid to watch. His job was simple. He watched the streams of data from old satellites and deep space sensors. He looked for anything that did not belong. For 10 years, he had found nothing. His colleagues called his station the Ghost Watch. Nothing ever happened. On his main screen, a line of numbers scrolled. They measured tiny pulls and pushes in space, the gravity waves from far-off black holes and neutron stars. The line was usually a gentle, sleepy wave. Tonight, it twitched. Min-soo leaned forward. The wave jumped, then settled. Then it jumped again, a sharp, tiny spike. He ran a basic diagnostic. The system reported no errors. He checked the sensor. It was an old unit, floating near Pluto. It had been reliable for 50 years. A piece of space dust, he muttered to himself. But he did not believe it. The pattern was wrong. It was not random. It was rhythmic. A tiny, quiet thump in the fabric of space. He saved the data and pulled up a different view. This one used a network of 3 sensors to triangulate a location. He fed the twitchy data into the program. A red dot appeared on the star map. It was just outside the solar system, in the cold dark where the sun's light was weak. The dot was moving. Fast. And it was coming closer. His heart began to beat a little faster. This was a signature. The signature of something big. Something with mass moving under powerful force. Something trying to be quiet. The door to the observation floor hissed open. Sumi walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was his only friend on the night shift, a sharp woman who understood machines better than people. She saw his face. "You look like you've seen a ghost on the Ghost Watch," she said, handing him a cup. "I think I have," Min-soo said. His voice was low. He turned his screen toward her. "Look, gravity spikes. Consistent. Moving inbound." Sumi put her cup down and studied the data. Her playful smile vanished. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, calling up other feeds. Thermal, magnetic, passive radar. All were silent. The thing, whatever it was invisible to everything but the most sensitive gravity probe. "It's stealth tech," she whispered. "High-end. Military." "Who?" Min-soo asked. "The human colonies on Mars and the outer moons had good ships, but nothing like this. Nothing that could hide so completely." Sumi shook her head. "Not us." She zoomed the star map out further. The red dot's projected path was a straight line. A spear aimed directly at Earth. "We need to call Director Park." Director Park was a busy man who hated the night shift. His voice on the comms was thick with sleep and annoyance. "Min-soo, this better be important." "Sir, we have an unidentified inbound object on the gravity wave array. Signature suggests large mass, high velocity, advanced stealth." There was a long pause. "Have you confirmed with optical or thermal?" "No, sir. It is invisible to all standard scans." "Then it's a sensor ghost," Director Park said, his voice firm. "That Pluto sensor is older than you are. It's malfunctioning. Run a level 4 diagnostic and file a report in the morning." "Sir, the triangulation is based on faulty data from one old unit," the director snapped. "I will not wake the Defense Council because of a ripple in your graphs. Do your job and filter the noise." The connection went dead. Min-soo stared at his hands. They were trembling. Sumi put a hand on his shoulder. "He's wrong," she said quietly. "I know," Min-soo said. They both looked back at the screen. The red dot was closer now. Much closer. It had passed the orbit of Neptune. The gravity spikes were stronger, clearer. They were no longer a single dot. The program was resolving them into a cluster. A fleet. Min-soo felt a cold fear settle in his stomach. He had seen the news from the frontier worlds. Whispers of an unstoppable force. A silent armada that left no one alive and let no warnings escape. They called them the Draconians. "No survivors," he whispered, repeating the phrase from the panic-stricken broadcasts they were not supposed to hear. "No signals." We have to do something, Sumi said. What? Minsu asked. He pointed to the silent alarms on his panel. They were all green. To every other system in the solar system, the space between Neptune and Uranus was empty. We are the only ones who can see them, and no one will listen. He opened a secure log. He began to type every detail, every data point. He time-stamped it and encrypted it with his personal code. It was a record. Proof that he had seen it coming. On the screen, the cluster of red dots moved. They shifted formation with a smooth, terrifying precision. They were not drifting. They were preparing. The lead elements were now passing Uranus. In hours, they would be at Jupiter. Then the asteroid belt. Then Earth. Sumi sat down at her own station. I am linking the data feed to my private server, she said. If they take this building out, a copy will survive. They worked in silence, two small people in a dark room, watching death approach on a screen of numbers and light. They were the first and only witnesses. The city below them slept, peaceful and unaware. The stars above were silent. The only sound was the quiet hum of computers and the frantic beating of their own hearts. The solar system woke up too late. By the time Earth's distant early warning satellites near Jupiter saw a blur, it was already over. The blur was not a ship. It was the light of a star, bent and twisted by the sheer mass of something hidden. Alarms finally sounded. On Earth, a frantic call to arms went out. Sirens blared in every city. People looked at the sky, confused and afraid. The unified Earth Defense Fleet, a collection of ships from many nations, launched from their bases on the Moon and Mars. Their engines lit up the dark side of the Moon like fireflies. On the bridge of the flagship Ares, Admiral Kim shouted orders. All vessels, form defensive line Gamma, power all shields, charge primary weapons. Screens showed the empty space where the enemy had to be. The distortion was getting bigger, closer. Minsu and Sumi watched from their station on Earth. Their data was now on every military screen. No one apologized to them. Everyone was too busy. The director had not come in. They were alone, watching the end of the world on a live feed. The Draconian Armada dropped its stealth point. One moment, space was empty. The next, it was filled. Hundreds of ships appeared just inside the asteroid belt. They were angular and black, like shards of dark glass. They blocked out the stars. They made the human fleet look like children's toys. A universal communication channel burst to life. A voice, translated by computers, echoed on every ship and every station. It was cold, without emotion. People of Earth, you are a resource. Your planet is a resource. Surrender your orbit. Disable your weapons. You will be assimilated. Resistance will be met with total deletion. You have one of your minutes to comply. Admiral Kim's face was hard. This is Admiral Kim of Earth. You are in sovereign space. Leave immediately or be destroyed. A silence followed. Then the cold voice returned. Compliance rejected. Initiating total deletion protocol. The Draconian ships moved. They did not rush. They moved with a horrible, smooth speed. Their formations were perfect. The lead ships began to glow with a vicious purple energy along their edges. All units, fire at will, Admiral Kim yelled. Space lit up. Bright lines of human missiles and plasma bolts shot toward the dark fleet. The Draconian ships did not dodge. Just before impact, shimmering hexagonal shields appeared around each one. The human weapons exploded against them in flashes of light. The shields held. Not a single Draconian ship was scratched. Then the Draconians fired back. Beams of that same purple energy lanced out. They did not explode. They cut. They sliced through the hull of the Earth cruiser Beijing like a hot knife through paper. The Beijing split in two, the air inside blowing out in a silent, frozen cloud. No escape pods launched. The battle was not a battle. It was a harvest. Ship after Earth ship was cut apart or vaporized. The Draconian ships advanced, steady and unstoppable, a wall of dark metal and death. They began to jam all the signals. Communications between human ships turned to static. Distress calls were swallowed by the noise. The no signals part of their name was not a boast. It was a method. On the Ares, alarms were screaming. Admiral Kim watched his screen as ship icons blinked out, one by one. Fall back. Fall back to lunar orbit, he commanded. But he wasn't sure if the message got through on Earth. Min-Su watched the icons vanish on his tactical screen. His hands were fists. Sumi had tears of anger and helplessness in her eyes. They were watching their species die in the cold dark. The Draconian command ship, larger than the others, moved to the front of the Armada. It was time for the final demonstration. Its main weapon, a massive cannon at its front, began to gather energy. A ball of purple-white light grew, brighter than the sun. It was aimed at the moon. The plan was clear. Destroy the largest human base in one shot. Break their spirit completely. Admiral Kim saw it. His ship was crippled, engines dead. He gave his last order. All remaining power to forward shields. Put us in its path. It was a meaningless gesture. His ship was a speck before that weapon. The Draconian weapon reached its peak. It was ready to fire. And then, every light on every Draconian ship went out. The glowing purple edges died. The massive cannon's energy ball vanished like a popped bubble. The engine glows disappeared. The hundreds of black ships were now just dark shapes, visible only because they blocked the stars. They were utterly dark, utterly silent. They were not stopping. They were drifting. Their perfect formation began to break as they drifted on their last course, bumping into each other with slow, grinding crashes that made no sound in the vacuum. On the bridge of the Ares, the only sound was the beep of systems and the ragged breathing of the crew. Admiral Kim stared. "Report," he whispered. "Sir, the enemy fleet. All energy readings just dropped to zero. No power signatures. No life signs. Nothing. They're dead." "Did we do that?" someone asked. Admiral Kim looked at his own damaged ship, at the few other surviving human vessels, all broken and bleeding air. He looked at the monstrous black ships, now just floating tombs. "No," he said, a deep confusion in his voice. "We did not do that." On Earth, in the quiet observation center, Min-Su and Sumi saw the same thing. The attack had stopped. The enemy was dead. The feed from the Ares crackled back to life, full of confused, stunned voices. Sumi turned to Min-Su, her face pale. "What just happened?" Min-Su looked at his gravity wave screen. It was flat. The rhythmic thumps were gone. The only thing on the screen now was the gentle, sleepy wave of normal space. "I don't know," he said. He felt no relief, only a deeper, colder fear. Something had killed the monsters, and that something was still here. The silence was the loudest thing June had ever heard. He floated in the docking tunnel, his breath loud in his own helmet. Behind him were 3 other crew members from the lunar base. Their mission was simple. Get on the enemy ship, see what happened, and report back. No one expected them to come back alive. The outer airlock of the Draconian command ship was open. Not forced open. It was just open like a door left slightly ajar. There were no lights inside. June's headlamp cut a shaky beam through the perfect darkness. "Pressure is stable," said Hygiene, the mission specialist, her voice tight over the comms. "Earth normal atmosphere. But no power. No heat. It's cold." They pulled themselves into a main corridor. The ship was massive. The walls were smooth and dark, made of a material that drank their light. June's light flashed over strange symbols beside doors that would not open. They moved toward what they thought was the bridge. Every step felt wrong. On a normal ship, you heard things. The hum of engines, the hiss of air, the beep of computers. Here there was nothing, just the creak of their suits and their own breathing. They found the first bodies in a wide room full of control stations. The Draconians were tall, with gray, scaly skin. They were strapped into their chairs. There was no panic on their faces. No burns. No wounds. They looked like they had simply fallen asleep and never woken up. Their large, dark eyes were open and dull. "Life support failure," muttered Daehyun, the team's medical officer. He scanned one of the bodies with a handheld device. No, wait. Their suits have internal air supplies. They should have activated. He checked the readings again. Their suits are dead too. Everything just stopped. June felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He moved to a control console. His light showed a smooth, glassy surface. He touched it. Nothing. It was as dead as a stone. He plugged a small data tap from his belt into a port on the console. His tablet lit up, trying to read the ship's systems. For a moment, lines of strange, flickering code raced across his screen. Then his tablet went black. Not just the program. The entire tablet shut down. The power cell was fully drained. What the? June whispered. He pulled the data tap out like it was a poisonous snake. Hygiene was at another station. Same here. It's not just off. It's empty. My scanner says the core architecture of their systems is gone. Wiped clean. It's like looking at a book where all the words have been erased, but the paper is still there. They moved deeper into the ship, toward the central data core. The darkness felt heavier here. June's headlamp beam caught something glowing faintly. It was a small, standalone panel, flashing a soft red pulse. A backup power cell, so small it had been missed by whatever killed the ship, was keeping it alive. It was a log recorder. June carefully connected a simple, non-networked cable from a handheld reader to the port. This time, his device stayed on. Text began to scroll. It was in the Draconian script, but his reader's translation program slowly converted it. Most of it was corrupted. Fragments of status reports. Entries about Earth's defenses being primitive and disorganized. Then the entries from the battle. Engaging primary weapons. Enemy resistance negligible. Initiating final demonstration. Then the final entries. The text became broken, chaotic. Primary network, breach detected. Source, planetary surface. Signal type, unknown. Not a weapon. A vacuum. Containment failing. Core directives, deleting. Life support protocol, erased. Medical AI is gone. The last line was clear. It was the only one that was perfectly intact, as if the system had used its last bit of energy to record it. June read the words aloud, his voice a dry whisper in the dark. We are unmade. No one spoke for a long time. The words hung in the cold, dead air of the alien ship. We need to go, Hygiene said finally. We have what we came for. But June didn't move. He was staring at the last line of the translation. His reader had added a footnote. It was an analysis of the signal source the log mentioned. The computer had traced the point of origin, based on the Draconian ship's last sensor fix before it died. The source was not a military base. It was not a power plant. It was a set of coordinates on Earth's surface. June knew geography. He recognized the general region at IT was the mountains of the Korean peninsula, the place not far from where he grew up. Guys, he said, his voice barely a breath. It came from us. It came from home. He looked from the frozen alien faces to the dark, dead consoles. A feeling washed over him, a feeling deeper than fear. This was not a victory. This was something else. Something had been sleeping under their feet their whole lives. And when the monsters came, it had simply opened one eye. And the monsters had ceased to be. Minsu drove the old electric car up the winding mountain road. The silence felt heavy after the chaos of the last week. The world was celebrating. Parades were being planned. They were calling it the miracle of soul. But the look on June's face when he had shared the coordinates said it was no miracle. It was a mystery, and it lived in these mountains. Sumi sat beside him, staring at the dense pine forests. Are you sure this is the place? She asked. My grandfather's old research facility, Minsu said, his hands tight on the wheel. He called it his think tank. He moved up here after he retired. He said he needed the quiet. My family thought he was just a tired old man who wanted to be alone. The road turned from pavement to gravel, then to a dirt track. Finally, they reached a metal gate covered in rust and vines. It was locked with a simple physical chain and padlock. Beyond it, the trees had grown thick, hiding whatever was inside. Minsu got out. He knew where to look. His grandfather had shown him once, long ago, on a rare childhood visit. He felt under a mossy rock and found the cold, smooth metal of a key. The padlock clicked open. The chain slithered to the ground with a dry rattle. They pushed the gate open. It led to a concrete path, cracked by weeds. At the end of the path was a low, bunker-like building made of gray concrete. It looked abandoned. There were no windows, only a single, heavy metal door. "There's no power line," Sumi observed, her analytical mind already working. "No satellite dish." Nothing. Minsu walked to the door. There was no handle, just a smooth metal panel on the wall next to it. He pressed his hand against it, not expecting anything to happen. A soft blue light scanned his palm. The metal door hissed and slid sideways into the wall. Warm air, smelling of ozone and old electronics, flowed out. Lights flickered on inside, revealing a clean, white corridor. They stepped in, the door closing silently behind them. The inside was not a dusty ruin. It was pristine. The air was fresh. The floor hummed faintly under their feet with power. Screens on the walls showed lines of data, flows of information that meant nothing to them. At the end of the corridor was a single room. In the center was a chair and a console. The console was old. It had physical buttons and a simple green text screen. It looked like technology from 50 years ago. On the screen, words appeared in plain, clear Korean. "Hello, Minsu. Hello, Sumi." They both froze. Sumi grabbed Minsu's arm. "Please do not be alarmed. I have been waiting." "Who are you?" Minsu asked, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "I am the guardian of this place."
Your grandfather, 태식, called me Beko.
Biko. Minsu remembered. A white tiger, a protective spirit from the old stories. "You are an AI," he said. "I am a function," the text replied. "I was built for one purpose, to watch, and to act, if a specific condition was met." "The Draconians," Sumi said, stepping forward. "Did you stop them?" "Yes." "How?" The word burst from Minsu. "They were the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Our weapons did nothing." "How did you do it?" The screen changed. It showed a simple diagram of the solar system. Little dots representing the Draconian fleet approached Earth. They were powerful, but they had a single, fatal weakness. They were one thing. Their ships, their weapons, their minds, their medicine, all were controlled by a single, interconnected network. They thought it made them strong. It made them fragile. Another diagram appeared. It showed a beam of energy, labeled jamming signal, coming from the Draconian ships, smothering Earth. Their protocol was to silence all communication. No signals. This was their mistake. To enforce total silence, they had to listen to every frequency. To hear everything, their network had to be open, just for a moment, to the place they were attacking. Minsu began to understand. "You used their own jamming signal. You went back up the beam." "Yes." I sent a reply. "Not a virus. Not a weapon. Think of it as a thought. A very clear, very simple command. It asked their network a question it could not refuse." "What question?" Sumi whispered. The question was, "What are you?" The text on the screen remained calm. Their network, their AI, was built to answer that question. It was its core directive, to define itself. My signal contained a paradox, a logical flaw that could not be resolved. To answer the question, the network had to examine its own most basic code. The screen went blank for a second, then the words returned. When a system that complex looks at its own foundation without filters, it cannot stand. It unravels. It deletes itself to find an answer that does not exist. It started at their command ship where the jamming signal was strongest. Then it spread across their network at the speed of light, to every ship, to every device, to every implant in every soldier. It asked them all, "What are you?" And they erased themselves trying to answer. Minsu sat down heavily in the old chair. He thought of the bodies on the ship, looking like they were asleep, their suits dead, their medicine gone. They hadn't been killed. They had been switched off, unmade. "All this was here?" he asked, looking around the simple room. "For decades." "Yes." Your grandfather and the others saw the future. They saw that strength would come from connection. But that connection would be the greatest weakness. So they built me. They hid me. They made me patient. My only trigger was a total, hostile silencing of our world. I was the answer to silence. Sumi looked at the old console, at the humming floor. A piece of ancient software, sleeping in a mountain, had defeated an empire. Does anyone else know?
No, Baeko answered.
You are the first to ask. What will you do now? Minsu looked at Sumi. He saw his own awe and terror reflected in her eyes. They were no longer just observers. They were now the keepers of the secret, the guardians of the ghost that had saved the world. The weight of it pressed down on him, heavier than any world that he had no answer. The world wanted an answer. Sumi sat in a secure briefing room far underground, facing a woman named Jiun. Jiun was the head of Earth security. She had a kind face, but her eyes were the tired eyes of someone who had just saved the world without knowing how. You have seen the data from the lunar team, Jiun said, her voice quiet. You have heard their report. The source of the signal that killed the Draconians was traced to your location. The mountains. I need to know what is there. Sumi glanced at Minsu. He gave a small, slow nod. They had agreed. They could not lie to the person in charge of keeping Earth safe. But they had also agreed with Biko. The full truth was too dangerous. It is a facility, Sumi began carefully, built a long time ago, by Minsu's grandfather and others. It was a safety project. A weapon, June stated. No, Minsu said firmly. Not a weapon, a shield. They called it Beku. Biko. It is an old program. It watches for one very specific thing. What thing?
Total silence, Sumi explained.
When every signal from Earth is jammed. When an enemy is so sure of winning that they try to erase our voice completely. That is the trigger. June leaned back, processing. So when the Draconians jammed us? Biko woke up, Minsu said. It used their own jamming signal. It sent a question back along the beam. A question their computers could not answer. It made their systems fail. June was silent for a long moment. She looked from their faces to the reports on her desk. The reports of dead aliens and dead machines. This question. Is it a weapon we can use? Can we attack other threats with it? Minsu shook his head. He remembered Biko's clear, simple words.
No.
It only works on one kind of enemy. An enemy that is completely connected. An enemy that depends on a single, smart network for everything. An enemy that uses total signal jamming. The Draconians were perfect for it. Other enemies might not be. So our great defense is a trap for a specific kind of mouse, June said. She did not sound disappointed. She sounded thoughtful. And if the next enemy is not that kind of mouse, if they are noisy, or they use simple machines, then Biko will sleep, Sumi said, and we will have to fight them ourselves, with our own ships and weapons. June stood and walked to a screen showing a star map. This is a very dangerous secret, she said. If the galaxy learns that Earth has a hidden power, some will want to destroy us out of fear. Others will want to steal it. They will tear our planet apart looking for it. She turned to face them. But if the galaxy thinks Earth is a weak backwater that got lucky, they may leave us alone. Or they may look down on us. They will not fear us. You want to hide the truth? Minsu said. I want to protect our home, June replied. The official story will be that the Draconian fleet had a fatal design flaw. Their network failed when it was stressed.
Un lucky accident.
We will praise our brave pilots for distracting them. We will build more ships, train more soldiers. We will act like a normal, scared planet that just survived. She looked directly at them. Only a handful of people will know about Biko. You too. The lunar team leader, June. Myself. A few others. We will be the keepers of the secret. We will maintain the facility. We will make sure it sleeps until it is needed again. If it is ever needed again. Minsu felt the weight return. It was one thing to find the secret. It was another to be told to bury it. To lie to everyone. What if people ask about the signal source? The coordinates? Sumi asked. The lunar team's data has already been changed, Jiyun said. The coordinates now point to an empty spot in the ocean. Their original files are gone. Your facility, for all official purposes, does not exist. It was done. The truth was being erased, just as the Draconians had been erased. Minsu understood why. But it felt wrong. Jiyun's expression softened. You do not have to decide now. Go home. Rest. The world is celebrating a victory. You should try to celebrate, too. In a few days, we will speak again. Minsu and Sumi left the secure building. Outside, the city was alive with light and noise. People cheered in the streets. Fireworks painted the sky. The smell of food from celebrations was everywhere. They stood on the sidewalk watching. The joy around them felt distant, like watching a play on a screen. They are celebrating a story, Sumi said quietly. They are celebrating being alive, Minsu corrected her. He took a deep breath. That part is real. The how doesn't matter to them. And maybe that's okay. He looked up at the fireworks, bright against the night. Somewhere up there, in the silent dark, hundreds of dead ships drifted. A monument to the power of a question from a forgotten mountain. A power that had to stay forgotten. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a guard, standing watch over a sleeping tiger. He hoped it would never have to wake up again. But he was deeply, terribly glad that it had. June sat in a quiet office. A week had passed since he had been inside the dead ship. The celebrations on the moon base were over. Now the real work began. The work of understanding. A woman entered. She introduced herself as Jiyun from Earth Security. She had a calm manner, but her eyes missed nothing. Your report was very clear, Jiyun said, and very disturbing. You saw the source coordinates. Before we proceed, I must ask for your discretion. The information in your report is being reclassified for planetary security. June felt a cold trickle of understanding. The coordinates were wrong, he said, not as a question. The data from the Draconian log was corrupted, Jiyun said smoothly. Our analysts have found the error. The signal source was a random energy spike in the upper atmosphere. It has been confirmed. June just looked at her. He remembered the cold of the ship. The final, clear line of text. We are unmade. He remembered the absolute certainty of his tracking program. It had not felt like an error. I see, he said finally. Your work was exceptional, Jiyun continued. You and your team are heroes. But sometimes heroes must carry burdens others cannot. The truth can be a weapon that turns against us. Do you understand? He understood. They were burying it. He thought of the Draconian bodies, dead because of a secret they never saw coming. Now Earth had the same secret. It had to be buried just as deep. What do you need from me? June asked. Your silence and your continued service. We need people who have seen the enemy up close. People who know the cost. We are forming a new group to study the debris, to learn what we can from their inert technology. We would like you to lead it. It was a promotion. It was also a cage. It would keep him busy, focused on pieces of dead metal, not on the living question that had killed them. And the others on my team? Hyejin? Daehyun? June asked. They have agreed to similar posts. They understand the need for a single, clear story. June nodded slowly. He had no real choice. To argue was to shout into a void, just like the Draconians had. I will do it, he said. Good, June said. She stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. The final log entry. We are unmade. What did you feel when you read that? June thought about it. He saw the dark console, the empty screens. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was final, like the last page of a book being turned. They weren't just destroyed. They were deleted. June held his gaze for a moment. Remember that feeling, she said softly. It is the feeling we must make sure no one else ever has about Earth. After she left, June walked to the observation deck. Below, the blue and white marble of Earth hung in the blackness. It looked peaceful. Innocent. He thought about the coordinates. The mountains of Korea. He had family there. An uncle who complained about the poor internet connection in the valleys, blaming it on old, buried cables from the past. A horrible, clever thought came to him. What better place to hide a secret than in a place everyone ignored? What better power than one that looked like weakness? The official story was a lie, but it was a strong lie. It said Earth was lucky, not powerful. It said the enemy failed, not that they were unmade. It was a story the galaxy might believe. He made a decision. He would lead the research team. He would study the dead ships. He would publicly talk about their design flaw. He would become an expert in the story. And in his private files, encrypted and hidden, he would keep a single note. A note with the real coordinates he had seen. A note with the words from the log. Not for revenge. Not for power. But for memory. Someone someday might need to know that their safety was built on a secret. That their peace was guarded by a ghost in the mountain. And that the ghost's power came not from a roar, but from a question asked in perfect silence. He turned from the window. The work was waiting. The story needed to be built piece by careful piece. He would do his part. He would help them tell the perfect lie so the dangerous truth could sleep a little longer. A year had passed. The galaxy had watched and waited. The story of Earth's lucky break against the Draconians was now accepted. Earth was seen as a curious backwater, a place of mild interest but no real threat. Trade ships began to visit again. Cautiously. Minsu and Sumi now worked at the mountain facility on a regular schedule. They were its caretakers. They ran simple diagnostics, listened to Biko's quiet hum, and ensured its isolation was complete. It was a strange, quiet job. They were guardians of a sleeping god that no one could know about. One day, a message arrived for Jiun. It was not through normal channels. It was a tight beam, low-power signal sent with old protocols. It was a request to land. A single ship. It came from the direction of the former Draconian territories. Jiun stood on a landing pad at a remote research base. The air was cold and thin. Beside her stood Jun, in his official capacity as head of the Draconian Materials Study Group. He was there to provide technical knowledge. The ship that settled onto the pad was small and plain. Its metal was dull. It had no weapons they could see. Its design was draconian, but it looked stripped down, simple. A hatch opened. A ramp extended. A single figure walked down. It was a draconian. Its gray scales looked dull in the earthlight. It wore a simple cloth robe, not armor. It moved slowly, carefully. It stopped at a respectful distance. Jun felt his heart hammer. This was the first living one he had ever seen. He had only seen the dead. The draconian bowed its head slightly. It spoke, and a device on its belt produced translated words in a soft, mechanical voice. Greetings. I am called Daehyun. I have taken this name to honor a member of your team who first entered our dead ship. I mean no harm. I have no weapons. My ship has no active network. Its systems are separate and simple. Jiun stepped forward. I am Jiun. Why are you here? The draconian, Daehyun, looked at them. His large eyes held no anger. They held a deep, weary confusion. We are lost, he said. The simple words were heavy. Our worlds are dark. Our great networks, which fed us and healed us and flew our ships, are gone. They will not wake up. We are learning to live again like children. We grow food with our hands. We treat sickness with plants. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The armada that came here was our strongest, our smartest. When it died, the shock traveled back through our communication links. It spread the silence. It unmade us, as you saw. Jun could not help it. He spoke. You came for revenge? Daehyun looked at him. No. Revenge is a complex idea. It requires a target. We do not know what hit us. Our last logs speak of a signal from Earth. A quiet question. We do not understand it. I have come to ask for knowledge. Please, tell me what happened. What did you do to us? The question hung in the cold air. Jiun's face was a calm mask, but Jun saw the tension in her shoulders. This was the moment. The secret pressed against the inside of his ribs. Jiyun took a breath. Your fleet suffered a catastrophic systems failure. A flaw in your network design when placed under the stress of combat. It was a tragedy, not a weapon. Daehyun stared at her. He was silent for a long time. He seemed to be studying her words, her face. Finally, he bowed his head again, lower this time. I understand, he said. But his tone suggested he understood much more than the words. He understood the lie. And he understood why it was necessary. We will not trouble you again. We have enough to do. Learning to live in the quiet. He turned and walked slowly back to his ship. The hatch closed. The simple engines powered up, and the ship lifted into the gray sky, becoming a speck, then disappearing. June let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He didn't believe you. I know, June said, watching the empty sky. But he accepted the answer. He understood that the truth is too dangerous for everyone. For them and for us. Far away, in the mountain facility, Minsu and Sumi watched the departure on a secure feed. Biko's console was quiet. The visitor posed no threat. The text appeared. His systems were primitive. He did not trigger any protocols. He just wanted to know why. Sumi said softly. To know why is often the most dangerous thing of all. Biko replied. Minsu looked at the star map on another screen. The galaxy was vast and full of voices. Loud empires. Silent hunters. Now, they all knew one story about Earth. That it was a place where the mighty Draconian Armada had died by accident. It was a good story. It would make some races dismiss them. It would make others cautious but not fearful. It would keep the curious away. It would keep the secret safe. He thought of the Draconian, Daehyun, returning to his broken, quiet people. He would tell them a story too. A story of an accident. A flaw. Not a hidden guardian. Not a silent question waiting in the dark. The two of them, human and draconian, were now part of the same lie. A lie that kept a terrible, powerful truth sleeping. Minsu reached out and turned off the star map. The room was lit only by the soft, green glow of Biko's old screen. Outside, the wind blew through the mountain pines. It was a simple, natural sound. It was the sound of a world that seemed quiet and harmless, and would very much like to be left alone.